Hi. This week's conversation was on tough love, and I want to bring you the highlights of what we spoke about. The basics of the conversation were that tough love is about self-love, because it's tough to love ourselves when others around us who we care about and love are impinging on our good, are asking of us too much. And so some people think of tough love as somehow having to do with holding others accountable and what we do to make them stand up for who they are. And that's not love. Love is when we come back to ourselves and love ourselves so deeply and find that place of love so deeply in ourselves that then what comes out of us is, of course, emerges from love. Even if it's to say, no, I can't do this. I love you, but this I cannot do. And so one of the things we spoke about last week around responsibility, or the ability to respond in the present moment, had to do with asking ourselves when our feet are at the fire, is this mine to do? And that is the heart of self-love. Because once we get to that place where we are loving ourselves, then asking that question and knowing where we are to respond from becomes from a very centered place. The airlines tell you very clearly that if there is no oxygen in the plane and the masks drop, to put on your own first and then put on your loved one's mask. And that's because if you go unconscious from lack of oxygen, you can't help anybody. Well, it's the same with love. If you come from that place of depletion, you have nothing to give. And so when we look at how to stand in the face of having a child, I know a parent whose child is an addict and actually robs from her. And she thinks so far that she's being responsible in her love for caring for this child by letting him. And I say, where is the self-love? Which is where true responsibility comes from. We must love ourselves. The Buddha says, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Now I know that gets tough when others around us are impinging upon us, asking too much. But it isn't about looking to create the boundaries for their good. It starts with creating whatever we have to for our own good. And out of that, our response is very organic, real, authentic, and has an aliveness to it. My son called up about a week ago saying he didn't have a place to live. And my first response was to save him and offer him a place, saying he could crash at my house. But instead, what I did was say, I will call you back. And I took the time to sit with Ashley, my beloved, and talk about what was self-loving in this first. And from that place, because it's impossible to tell somebody else they're a powerful, creative, spiritual being if you're not feeling like one yourself, if you're feeling off center. So it starts with feeling ourselves be this powerful, creative, spiritual being, and then reaching out. And so when I felt that place, I then called him back, and I told him what a powerful, creative, spiritual being he was. And I told him I was here for him. But I never actually offered to have him crash on my couch, because we have a very small place for 2 adults and 2 kids. And yet I was willing, if that was his last resort, to ask me about that. And that's what I had come to in self-love, that I could be there for him and yet allow him to stand up for himself. And sure enough, he found another place to stay. And he's flourishing and doing beautifully. Ralph Waldo Emerson tells us what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. When we remember to love ourselves, and when we remember that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings, it is easy to see that in others. And to know that we don't have to give beyond our measure for them to be whole, complete. We can know that their good is theirs from a place of wholeness and love in ourselves. One person at the conversation spoke about spiritual integrity and the idea that tough love is when we take the time, no matter how tough it is, to get spiritually centered. And that's what we're talking about here. Because it's from that spiritual centered place we can experience self-love. We spoke about sacrifice and how there really is no such thing. That when we talk about sacrificing for our kids, actually, when we do for our kids, what we get back, that love we get back, is incredible. I brought up the idea of having Super Bowl tickets at the same day as my child is in a school play and passing on the game to go watch my child in that play. Now, for some, that may seem like a sacrifice, but the smile and hug I got from that is just over the top incredible. Far beyond anything I would have gained from going and watching the Super Bowl. Another person brought up the example of giving into our lower desires as tough love being holding that place of higher good, even in the midst of wanting those lower desires. And that is a powerful example of tough love for ourselves. When we stand in that place of just standing for what is best for us and not giving in to those lower base desires that sometimes can run us if we let them. Tough love is always getting back to that place of centeredness, that place of self-love. It is a place of non-criticalness. Tough love is not being judgmental, because that's not so easy in the midst of being judgmental to others or ourselves. I know for myself that I have actually done compensating behaviors out of regrets of the past, and those never work out. Louise Hay says you have been criticizing yourself for years, and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens. So tough love is actually being approving of yourself and your well-being. Standing for yourself in the midst of any circumstance. Knowing yourself to be a powerful, creative, spiritual being. And then from that place, responding in the moment to those you love who are asking whatever it is they're asking of you. That's what we came up with in our conversation this week. Next week is on love and triggers. And I hope you'll join us in our Zoom room on Wednesday, noon or 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I look forward to seeing you there.